All right, y'all. We're going live on Facebook, and I gotta wait 1 second to click go live on Insta. All right. Welcome to the second episode of Bridges Not Walls. It is me, Brandon, and Brian with you today. We have a guest with us, Representative Gary Brewer from House District 114, representing part of West Ashley and I believe Dorchester County. And we're really excited to hear from him today. We don't have a lot of updates on the front end, as I understand it. I do want to share with you all a couple of quick things. First, this week, I was very honored to join the Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation Commission at the City of Charleston. This comes on the tail end of what has been ongoing. Unfortunately, folks showing up to City Council in Charleston and really laying into our council people in support of a resolution condemning Israel and all sorts of things. And I sat in the room there this past week, and they were playing audio of mothers crying for dead children and celebrating a young man who lit himself on fire this past week, and all sorts of things that were just really difficult to sit through. But as I understand it, the goal is to transition this conversation that should be taking place between people in our city um, over to a place where a conversation can occur about this, where it's relevant, which is not necessarily the city council chambers. And several people walked up and said, we're really grateful that the Jewish community hasn't shown up and turned this council chamber into a back and forth fight. So I wanted to report that back to you all. In addition, and we can talk more a little bit about this afterwards, we have our State Advocacy Day coming up next week on Wednesday. We'll be going up to Columbia. The House will be reading a resolution in support of Israel and honoring KKB's 275th birthday. We'll be able to be in the gallery and be introduced. We'll hear from some professionals like Ryan Pelfrey from Atlanta, the ADL, and a couple of the lobbyists who work up there in support of hate crimes, and get a little bit of training before we ourselves do some lobbying in the lobby of the State House. So it should be a really great experience. Hope some of y'all choose to join us. Information below on how to register. We're going to be carpooling. If you can't drive, we have folks that can give you a ride. Brian, did I miss anything?
No. It's also a good opportunity for us to engage with representatives. I know, like, sometimes the call to action is to send an automated email, which is great, but this gives you hands-on experience with meeting the representative and getting in touch. So we welcome everyone to join.
Yeah, Brian, to that point, I don't think people realize it's not like Washington, D.C. When you drive an hour and 45 minutes up to Columbia, you really can talk to your elected officials. Like, you can page them right from the lobby. They'll come out and talk to you. Their offices are right there. You can pop in. I think there's also a misconception about where the most important, people assume the most important laws all happen and bills get passed at the federal level. And really, like 75% of what affects our day-to-day life is happening right in Columbia and in our city council chamber. So you can really have a huge impact within driving distance of where you live. I won't delay this any longer. I'm really excited that today we have Representative Gary Brewer with us. And a little bit about Representative Brewer. This is his first term in the South Carolina State House, and he has been a vocal supporter of hate crimes legislation. A lot of people think this is a Republican versus Democrat issue, but they forget that in the House this past year, hate crimes legislation passed overwhelmingly with both party support. So with that, I think we'll bring Representative Brewer on. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate y'all letting me join y'all today.
Well, I gave you kind of a sad, short introduction. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you have devoted so much of your time to public service.
So thank y'all so much for having me today. I'm a lifelong resident of House District 114, as it lays currently. I grew up in the Oak Brook, Somerville area of Kings Grant, off of Dorchester Road, which is part of our district now, and it's been pretty neat to be able to serve folks I grew up with and family that's in the area and family around as well too. I attended Dorchester District 2 schools my whole life. Went way off to college at the Citadel and enjoyed being down there. Met my wife here locally. She grew up in Hanahan, and her whole family's here in the Hanahan area, in the North Charleston area. And we now reside over here in West Ashley off of Highway 61. And we're thankful to be in the area and thankful to be in the area we grew up in. And that way, when I talk around people, they actually understand me, because everybody thinks I mumble when I talk elsewhere. So, but yeah, we're excited to be here. I'm lucky to be here, and excited to be in this area. And we serve, and I say we because it's a family commitment. My wife and I had to make the commitment to serve because she sacrifices with me being gone during the week and taking care of things here at the house and also working in her job. But we decided to run because at the end of the day, if not me, then who? And I think that's the easy question. An easy statement a lot of people say is, if not me, then who? Well, it rings true to me. And from infrastructure priorities to the hate crimes legislation to just common sense, I felt like we needed some more common sense up there, and I hope I was bringing a little bit to it.
Yeah. Well, we thank you for your service, Brian. You live out near that?
Yeah, I'm right across from you in Westcott.
Oh yeah. There you go. Sounds good. Yeah.
And my son will be attending Dorchester too as well. So
very cool. That's a great area. Actually, you have Representative Chris Murphy over that area, and you'll enjoy Chris. Chris is a great guy, and actually, he was on the hate crimes legislation as well too with us. Our whole Dorchester delegation for the Republican side was together on that.
So it's funny that you said, if not me, who, because there's a really famous Jewish expression that comes from Pirkei Avot that says, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, who am I? If not now, when? And it's something we live by. We have to stand up for ourselves, but not just ourselves. And we can't wait on anybody else to do it for us. So I know it's not exactly the highest paying job in the world, devoting most of your time to representing our district or the state house, maybe unlike some other places, but it's really important work. And I think people only see like the big speeches that get clipped up and put into campaign commercials, but I'd say probably the majority of what y'all do happens in your district, listening to your constituents and debating budget items and really kind of nitty-gritty details that most people don't think about as it relates to all these policies that govern us.
Yeah, without a doubt. It was funny when I went through the first part of the session last year from January to June. Everybody was like, how busy was that? And I said, it really wasn't busy because it was structured time in Columbia and serving at the State House. From June to December, it amazed me how busy we were in the district because there's so many issues that people need help with, whether it's DHEC issues, whether it's DOT issues, day in, day out stuff that people are trying to figure out, help with whatever that they have come across. And, I know how I am. I can't speak for all legislators, but, we put our personal cell phone out there for everybody to call us, text us, email us, get in touch with us. And we check every single day our emails and make sure we stay on top of people because we're each responsible for 41 to 43,000 people and that's a lot of people that can come up with a lot of issues, and they need help, and we need to make sure that we're there to help them. And we stay pretty busy and go to different functions, see different people, see the needs of our district and our state as well, because although we legislate and represent our district, we're a small part of our state, and we need to make sure that we're helping our brothers and sisters all across the state.
Absolutely. Brian, do you want to get us started with a question?
Yeah. So let's go. Speaking of politics, maybe in the state and even in the U.S., it seems that it's very polarized at the moment. And even, I'll be online and on Twitter, people be saying, well, if you vote this way, then you're an immoral person. Without even, going to the days where you actually get to know someone and see if they, who they are and what they represent and what their values are. And then maybe you talk about politics. But now it's, this issue and it's binary, good, bad, good, evil. Could you talk maybe a little bit about what's driving this polarization? And then maybe, from my point of view, no matter what you value, the best way to make progress is to work together with people that have opposing views, and to maybe try and find some sort of common ground. And even if you can't, at least listen to them so that you understand, and maybe you could help them, in coming together in some way. But maybe you could speak a little bit about that from your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great question. Civil discourse is the bedrock of our democracy. At the end of the day, we are never always going to agree on every issue out there. There's just too many people, too many different groups. We're never always going to agree on everything. What I think's changed since I was young to where I am now, in the past, I'm 43 years old, be 44 this month sometime. And I'm going to tell you, I've seen a great deal of change from the days of when Strom Thurmond and Fritz Holling served to where today, where you have our senators and our people like myself that are serving today. And I believe it's because social media has allowed everybody to be able to spout off in a moment and not take time to reflect and understand what may be going through another group or what other group may be going through. So to me, social media has made reactions instantaneous, and there's not been a cerebral thought process with people willing to sit down and engage one-on-one. It's interesting. I get a lot of emails from people, small groups. I think there's fringe factions that on left and right that are very vocal when it comes to social media and email and not face-to-face talking. And when you get in front of people and try to engage them, they're not quite as loud, they're not quite as boisterous, and they're not quite as emphatic. I still believe that the moderate center is the majority of our country. But unfortunately, I believe that we have some factions that have been just they have a platform and they can spout whatever they want to and make it seem more than what it is. Misinformation travels so fast today. People don't take the time to read through the depth. I hear all the time from both sides of the aisle with people saying, well, you didn't take the time to read the bill, talking about when they're talking about these major bills that are being passed up in Washington. Well, I can tell you that you didn't take the time to read the article. When you read it, most of the time they're reading headlines and spouting headlines out there, or spouting just a synopsis of what they're saying out there. And they're not taking the time to actually understand what's in the legislation, how we got to the legislation, and how we're trying to make the legislation better than what was previously there. And people don't understand that today that there's a process. There's processes that allow us to be able to amend, to be able to change, to be able to work and massage things through. That just because you see something today does not make it fact, does not make it absolute. It truly makes it a starting point for us. And that's where we get onto the floor, get into committees, and be able to work with each other to make the legislation what it needs to be, and be able to make it for the majority of the people in our districts in our state.
Maybe one quick follow-up, because I think that there seem to be these buzzwords that pop up, and that more or less shuts things down right away. For example, like DEI, or I mean, is there what is like maybe a better way to communicate to either avoid the buzzwords or make get people away from the stereotypes?
It's been my experience that people throw buzzwords out there to to get a reaction, not to get an answer. They're to get a reaction, and then they want to focus on the reaction, not on the substance. So I think the best thing to do is to actually sit down with everybody and talk and say, hey, this is what we're trying to get to. This is where we want to be, and this is where we are. What's the way to get there? And let's talk about it without just trying to elicit a reaction and try to be able to pounce on the reaction. Let's talk about substance. Let's not talk about titles.
Thanks.
So, as a follow up to the follow up of that question, in South Carolina and across the country, we've seen like some really extreme legislation move forward on every side of the political spectrum. And, we find out that some of this legislation passes overwhelmingly despite the public not being there in terms of polling, in terms of their opinions on the legislation. What do you think drives forward legislation that's unpopular with voters? Why is some of that able to move forward so quickly?
Well,
and versus something like the hate crimes bill, which is popular with voters, that can't move forward.
So, and I'm make sure I address your question correctly. So, I think with legislators and what I've seen, the ultimate polls the election, right? The ultimate polls the person getting into the office, and unfortunately, there's a lot of people that get into office. Not a lot. There's some people that get into office that believe they're getting into office because of their beliefs and because of their thought process. Well, we're in office because we're there to represent our area. We're there to represent our constituency as a whole. If I'm a Republican, I was voted in by Republicans, but I'm there to represent my entire constituency, whether it be Republican or Democrat. Now, I do lean conservative, and I push conservative values, and I push that way, but I have to listen and see what's out there for everybody. There are some folks out there that believe that only the people that voted for them are the only reason why they're supposed to be in there, and maybe that's why they should push the legislation that they believe that they have out there. I think that we have to. I tell everybody this: there's an answer for everything. There's an answer for every single question out there, but is there a answer that works for the majority? Is where we have to be. And that's where we have to work. Were we elected by a majority? Absolutely. Were we elected to represent the entire group? Absolutely. So we need to make sure that we come up with legislation and push legislation through that's common sense, that is working for the betterment of the whole. And I know that's kind of a roundabout way of answering your question. There's some people that think that the referendum is them and not the people. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. And as a not a follow up, but as a question that relates to that we wanted to ask, when we were getting ready to have you for this program, I knew that you and many of your colleagues in the legislature who are Republicans voted for the hate crimes bill, and I looked up your name on Facebook to see what your social media profiles were so I could tag you in the post that you joining us for this vlogcast. And one of the first things that popped up, and I'll share it. One of the first things that popped up, it's not embarrassing, I promise. One of the first things that popped up was this post, and maybe Facebook just knows me well, knows I care about the hate crimes bill. But it said it was basically you telling a few loud people who I guess were giving you a hard time about voting for the hate crimes bill that you really support it and that it's important, and that you were kind of, as the kids would say today, standing on business in your support for the bill. And so first, thank you, but apart from that, as a Republican House member that supports this legislation, what do you think is at the root of the few senators in the Senate that oppose this legislation? And as a Republican, what is the argument that you make in support of it?
Yeah, so I can't speak for others as to why they don't see the importance of this legislation. I can speak for myself, and I can speak for what I was told when I was campaigning. We knocked on over 5,000 doors in our district, and overwhelmingly, the things that we heard were infrastructure. We need infrastructure improvements, and we need to figure out ways to take care of those that need help. And we also need to make sure that we keep convicted felons behind bars. And at the end of the day, we have a hate crimes legislation. But let's back up. The United States of America was founded to escape for those escaping tyranny and religious persecution. And that's our core of who we are as a people. And, if there's people out there that don't understand that there's people we need to protect, there's people that need the added assurance that when they leave their family to go to work, or when they leave their family to go somewhere else, that their family is going to be taken care of because they're not there, and that they have the security of knowing that they are taken care of just as much as everybody else out there. It frustrates me because our hate crimes legislation says that you have to be a convicted felon. That means you had to be convicted beyond a shadow of doubt by a jury of your peers. And then, and only then, can we bring up the hate crimes addition to your can a prosecutor charge you with hate crimes? At that point in time, you go back in front of the judge and jury again, and you have to be convicted by a jury of your peers beyond all reasonable doubt of a hate crime. So I've had people say, well, what if it's self-defense? Well, if it's self-defense, it's self-defense. It's not a crime. They say, well, what if it's, how can you prove that it's because of hate? Well, people that do this want people to know they did it because of hatred. They are not good people. This is literally good versus evil. They leave information on the computers. They leave information in writing. They build their life around their hatred, and they leave a timestamp just the same as a pedophile would do, or just the same as a serial murderer would do. It's the same thing. They leave the evidence. And again, it's up to that prosecutor to convince a jury of that person's peers beyond a reasonable doubt that happened. So I don't know how anybody could be against wanting to add to a convicted felon that has done something against somebody for a specific reason, only because of it. They're in a specific group or specific religion or specific race or sexuality.
How does the legislation, the people oppose it due to viewpoints of like free speech? How does that play in? Like, why would they oppose that?
I think that free speech is obviously, one of our inalienable rights. It's a right that we have. We have the ability to speak and say and do whatever we want. You do not have the ability to go kill somebody because of their religion. You do not have the right to go kill somebody because of their sexuality, because of their race. That your rights stop when you end somebody else's life or harm somebody else because you think that's your right. And that to me is about as cut and dry as I can make it.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that free speech argument comes from. I hear that a lot, not just with this law, but with others. And I think people have a misconception about how our Constitution works. I mean, if we've got a right to free speech that's guaranteed under the U.S. Constitution, there's no law that South Carolina can pass that would infringe upon that right that would then hold up in court, right? That constitutional right supersedes all other laws. We certainly appreciate your support for this bill, and we really hope that before the end of this legislative session here in a couple of months, that the Senate can find a way to get it done.
I look forward to our senators working with us to keep convicted felons behind bars, at the very least. If that's what they need to make it work, I hope that's the very least that they could look at, and they can look at joining their colleagues in the House and making sure that we keep convicted felons behind bars.
I often tell people when we're talking about this law that our criminal laws, I think people assume that they function as just as deterrents, and I think that in some cases that may be true, but our laws are also like a collection of what our values are as a state, and a reflection of our values, and people read it that way. Our minority groups certainly read it that way, but also the hate groups read it that way. We've got neo-Nazis in different parts of the state. There are neo-Nazi forums that Dylan Roof used before he committed the massacre that he committed at Mother Emanuel Church, where these same kinds of folks make note that South Carolina is not the kind of place that will pass a hate crime bill, and take that as kind of an indicator of how welcome we are to white supremacists.
I also see, in certain corporations where they talk about, relocating, and not having a hate crime laws is one of the reasons why people don't move here, So, is there a reason why, being one of two states are left not to have it? Is there something behind the scenes that says I'm stating something here by not having it, when other states, even red states, do have a comprehensive bill? Like, is there, hey, I was able to not pass this, or is there anything, not like bragging rights, but like, is there anything else opposing it at this point?
Yeah, and that I'm not sure, and so I'll be very clear with this too. So we are one of only two states that does not have hate crime legislation enacted. I will say that the House passed hate crime legislation last term and has passed it this term. And, it lies at the feet of our senators to be able to pass something or get us something back to be able to debate and hopefully go to conference from, if we can't agree fully, and be able to get something that we can get passed. When it comes to companies coming to South Carolina, it's hard to argue. We've had some phenomenal economic success lately. Our economic development success has been second to none. Depending on different things, we're the fastest growing state in the nation. And people are coming here left and right. The majority of the people I hear from in my district don't have 843 area code numbers. They moved here from different areas. It's interesting because a lot of times somebody will text me and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have this number saved. It says you're from Washington, or it says you're from New York, or it says you're from Illinois. Thank you for coming here. And I'm glad you're here. So I don't know that it's kept people away, but I can see the argument that it could definitely speak to the hate groups that, hey, you have a haven, or maybe, hey, it's not the values of that state is not what they portray. But I know the people of South Carolina. I was born and raised here. I've been here my entire life. And I know one thing that we always have been for is making sure that we take care of our neighbor. That's why we have had such a strong military presence in South Carolina. And there's such a strong military and veteran presence still in South Carolina. South Carolina is a home to many folks. And one thing's for sure, those smiling faces and beautiful places are backed up by good people.
100%. I moved here also through a corporate relocation at the end of 2015, and I 100% agree that I think it's one of those stereotypes that may come out there without any intellectual depth or research behind it. Because I agree that the people here are wonderful, and I haven't encountered anything that some of these stereotypes represent. So I think it's maybe a marketing opportunity as well to pass this legislation, beyond what the value is.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask a Jewish question because folks expect that. We this past October there was a terrorist attack in Israel. It was the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Um, we are a very small group of people in the world, and certainly our Jewish community here has real connections with Jewish folks in Israel. Some family members, some folks born in Charleston serving in the IDF, and some folks who served in the IDF who now live in Charleston. And I know that our state has an economic relationship with the state of Israel. um, there's been a huge climb in both anti-Semitic and Islamophobic incidents since October 7th, based on people's prejudices and interpretations of what's happening in Israel and Gaza. Um, what is the General Assembly's role in addressing, the fallout from that, anti-Semitism, what's happening in Israel? How does the General Assembly get involved in that?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I can't imagine what the Jewish community went through on October 7th. That is a day that I know that has echoed through your community over and over since it's happened. And our thoughts and prayers are with everybody that's been affected by this. And I mean that by saying the Jewish community is also South Carolina's community, and especially our my district's community as well. We're all in the same boat there, good versus evil. And like we just mentioned a few minutes ago, South Carolina's good people. What happened on that day was some of the most evil and some of the most horrific things that we've ever seen happen on this earth. And I can't imagine how that affected everybody that had people that they knew, loved, and worked with, or had family with in that area. The role of our General Assembly is to represent those of South Carolina, and to represent what South Carolina stands for and what South Carolina won't stand for. And we won't stand for a community of ours, because a community within us is a community of us. We won't stand for the hatred. We won't stand for the group to be singled out, and as this hatred group tried to do, single-handedly eliminate a group. We need to make sure that everybody understands that we stand with the Jewish community. We need to stand solid when we do that, and we need to make sure that there's help, and that there's the ability to work with each other to get to a better place for everybody. And that's our role of our General Assembly, is to make sure that we're there to represent not only every faction, but those who are hurting the most as well too.
Well, I know that our community really appreciates that, and I was at one of the synagogues yesterday. My cousin is a kosher caterer here, and I always try to walk into her kitchen after work to see if I could if I might get some scraps that are left over. But in the kitchen, they were preparing for a fundraiser this weekend where a bunch of Israelis and a bunch of American Jews are going to cook Jewish and is American and Israeli traditional dishes. And there was a woman in the kitchen from Israel who now lives in Charleston. And I asked her why she chose Charleston out of all the places. She said, "This is the best place that I've been in the United States." And this is where we wanted to settle down more than any other place. And since then, they've started a business down on Market Street. But I was telling her that we were going up to the State House on Wednesday, and that the House was going to read a resolution in support of Israel, and celebrating the relationship that our state has with Israel. And she was so moved by that. In a lot of places around the country, state general assemblies and city councils are passing, horrible anti-Israel and arguably anti-Semitic resolutions, but we continue to be an exception. So I just wanted to thank you for that and let you know that it really does mean a lot to our community members.
I tell you, I look forward to standing up there when Representative Bernstein presents the resolution. I look forward to standing beside her. And I know many of my colleagues look forward to it as well. And like I said, at the end of the day, South Carolina is the home to good people, and hopefully people will understand that. If they didn't understand it before, hopefully they understand it on Wednesday when we stand up with the community and let them know that their community is also our community.
Well, I mean, that means a lot. And, and to that point, and we've said it a couple of times on this call about South Carolina, when we're talking about this hate crime bill out in the community and somebody says, well, what do you expect? South Carolina is a backward state or whatever. I am always very quick, and I think a lot of people are, to correct those people and say, no, South Carolina is full of great people, and it's a wonderful place to live. And, just because something is happening that involves politics doesn't mean that's a reflection of the people that live in our state. The people that live in our state have shown us over and over again that they're people who don't stand with hate, and we've experienced that in Charleston after Mother Emanuel. We've experienced it in Charleston after the shooting in Pittsburgh Synagogue in 2018 with the vigils that we had. And we see it with people getting together in support of hate crimes legislation from different communities. So I'm glad that point has come up. So before we go, for those in the community that are disheartened by all of these partisan fights, do you have an example? I hope you have an example. Do you have an example of our state General Assembly getting together on something, getting something accomplished in a bipartisan way that people might not have heard about in the news?
Yeah, so I tell everybody this, and this is kind of my own little story, but it's a reflection of our General Assembly. I can tell you I was kind of hesitant going up there, wondering how, when I went to Columbia, how it was going to be, if it was going to be R's versus D's, if we were going to have a divide, if there's going to be, we stare each other down when we walk in, how it was going to be. I wasn't sure, but I want to make this very clear. South Carolina, Columbia, our General Assembly, we're not Washington, D.C. Our folks aren't. We sit together. We don't sit amongst party lines. We sit together amongst our delegations. So when you see everybody sitting together, you don't have Republicans on one side and Democrats on the other. You have Dorchester County sitting together. You have Charleston County sitting together. You have everybody sitting together, Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter. They all sit together. And I've got the essence of that when we went through our budget last year. So when we got through the budget, and you probably followed it. I don't know many people that want to watch the legislature online, but for us political junkies, if you followed it online, you saw us, we'd go to, 11 or 12 at night, start again the next morning, go to 11, 12 at night, and we keep going through until we get everything done, because in South Carolina, we have to have a balanced budget, and we vote on every single line item that's in our budget. So when we got done with that budget, and remember, R versus D, we're all worn out. We've all been arguing. We've been trying to get our points across. We're trying to get everything done. And I remember Representative Russell Ott reaching out to me, and he said, "Hey, Brewer, would you like to go get a beer?" And I said, "Absolutely." And he and I walked across the street, and when we walked in, there was about 20 reps, R's, D's, it didn't matter, ties off, jackets off, enjoying the fact that we just got through civil discourse together, and we were there to have a beer because we were working to move our state forward as a group, not as a party. And it was interesting. It was fascinating. I was so thankful to do it. And I love telling that story because it's something that I think should, and for those, Russell's a Democrat, for those that know, you can disagree, but you can still be friends at the end of the day, and we can work to move our state forward by learning from each other, and making sure that we find issues that we can agree on, and then making sure that we respect each other if we disagree.
Well, I think that's a great model for everybody, and certainly, in our Jewish community, we're a small community, and people don't agree on a lot of things, and as an organization, we're always trying to keep everybody in that big tent and showing up for each other despite disagreements. And so it's good to hear that's happening at the state level too. Well, we appreciate having you on. Is there anything else, Brian, that you wanted to ask, and Representative Brewer, is there anything that you in particular wanted to share with the Jewish community, since I know you got an election coming up. Thankfully, not too soon, but up in November.
Yeah, Brian, I'll let you go if you have anything.
No, just whatever message you have for to share.
Yeah. So, yes, we're running. The entire legislature's up for re-election this year. So I encourage everybody to get involved. I encourage everybody to read past the headlines. I encourage everybody to get engaged in actual conversation. And please feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to me social media. You can reach out to me email. You can reach out to me cell phone. It doesn't matter. Everything's posted online. You can feel free to grab it. We're having a big kickoff to our re-election March 8th at Shadow Moss Country Club. 5:30 p.m. Feel free to come by. We're going to have some food and some music, and hope everybody comes by and feel free to ask questions. Feel free to tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm right. Tell me if I'm indifferent. It doesn't matter. My job is to be your voice, and I look forward to doing that for another 2 years.
Well, thank you again, and to everybody watching. Hope you join us at the State House next week. That information is below. You've got to register so that we have a head count for the gallery. It gets crowded up there, and the room that we've rented out. We'll do our best to connect you with your individual legislators once you're up there. It's gonna be a great opportunity. It's our first time doing it. Hope we can do it every year. If you want to support our organization, you can go to jewishcharleston.org/give. If you haven't yet registered to vote or don't know if you're registered to vote, you can check on that at scvotes.gov. It's really important that our community continues to mobilize and that people continue to participate in our democracy. It's what makes it work. And have a great Shabbos if you're observing, or if you're not. And we appreciate you, Brian. You got a moment of Zen to send us off.
Shabbat shalom, and hope to see everyone next Wednesday.
All right. Well, have a great weekend. Bye.